Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome if this is your first time here. I am about to have a little conversation with you guys about the Shadowscapes tarot. I have a little story to tell about the Shadowscapes. I've probably told it before. If you haven't already seen it, some time ago I did a video where I had spent a month with the Shadowscapes tarot, did a bit of a deep dive into the deck. It is a deck that has sentimental value for me because, well, I'll get into all of that. The purpose of today's video is I recently was able to get a hold of, it is back in print, the Czech edition of the Shadowscapes Tarot. I was able to get it through Book Depository. I will put a Book Depository link down below so that you can check it out for yourself. But I got it because it's a different style of cardstock. The deck is in Czech, so it's a different language. But I feel like it's going to really level up my work with this deck and make me more likely to reach for it. So we're going to talk about that. Now, origin story. So the Shadowscapes Tarot was a Mother's Day gift from my kids, gosh, years ago. This deck had just released at the time, and this was the first edition in 2014, so it would have been a Mother's Day gift that same year, most likely. Worst case, or latest, would be 2015. The thing with this deck is that it's Stephanie Pumin-Law's artwork is incredibly detailed. And the Llewellyn edition of this deck, it has borders, the deck feels kind of small, and so eventually what I did to bond with the deck is I fully trimmed it, I edged it in these gorgeous pastel colors, I even added a layer of glitter pen, which I'm pretty sure has since completely worn off, but in natural light you would get this delightful sparkle all over the deck, really pretty. But I trimmed the deck down to complete borderless, but this cardstock, it's very, very, very thin. It's not like some of Llewellyn's newer cardstock. I don't know if this one has ever come out in a slightly thicker version of Llewellyn's cardstock, but it does shuffle nicely, and the artwork is absolutely beautiful. It's very fantasy, but as you can tell, the art style, it's just incredibly detailed. Now, trimming it did help a lot. But I was missing the titles on the cards, which is no big deal. I do have a couple cards that trip me up sometimes, particularly around the courts and the majors and trying to make sure I'm looking at the right one. Now, eventually what I probably will do is modify this one to actually put with like a silver Sharpie and put the title of each card on here. But I did work with it fully borderless, and I talk about that a lot more in that video where I had spent a month with this deck. But it's absolutely beautiful. It's right up my alley. I love the soft colors. I love the fairy vibe. It's just, I mean, Stephanie's artwork is absolutely breathtaking. I mean, it's so gorgeous. That's the Queen of Cups, and she's stunning. I love this deck. But it's hard for my eyes because the artwork is so, so detailed. Now, I found out about the Czech version of the deck quite a while ago, but when I found out about it, I couldn't find it. It was out of stock everywhere. So the Czech version of the deck comes in this really nice 2-piece box. And the cards are a little bigger than standard tarot size. Now, it does come with a guidebook, but this is, of course, in Czech, so this does me no good. So I won't be keeping the cards probably in this box. I'll probably just keep them by themselves. But I wanted to show you sort of the difference. So the cardstock it's still quite bendy. It's definitely glossier. You can definitely tell if I catch the light. You can see the full reflection of the shape of my ring light, I think, or my wall, or something's reflecting there, versus the more satin cardstock of the Llewellyn. And bend-wise, like, let's see if I can do a bend test here. Let's see, I'll do it this way. You can hopefully get an idea for the differences in the cardstock. This feels sturdier. It still feels very shuffleable. But when you look at the size of the artwork, like let's just pull the trimmed portion. You can see in fact, let me put the back of this card so you can really see. So I'm going to come inside the border. So you have this section all the way to the border, and look at how much bigger just the artwork portion is. I could trim this deck and the cards would still be bigger than my trimmed copy of the Llewellyn. So you can see it's quite a bit more real estate for the artwork. It does come gilded, but yeah, it was a little like, gosh, the colors are a little different. Like I feel like we're slightly cooler toned in this version and slightly warmer toned in the Llewellyn. And let's just pull an exact duplicate card here so we can see. So here's our Hierophant card. And you can see There is a slight color difference. I actually want to say that maybe it's the gloss, but I feel like the colors here are a little bit more saturated. It's very slight. It's a very slight difference. So here's our Hermit card. Let's take a look at that one. See, and in this one, it almost looks like this one's a little more saturated, like the blues are deeper. I still think it's a little cooler. That's kind of what my vibe is. It's a little cooler, it's a little warmer. I don't know, but you can really tell the difference in the size of the artwork. I just feel like I can see this so much clearer. I will admit I am tempted to trim this because the other language here is probably going to throw me a bit, but I feel like at the very least, even though it's in Czech, I can clearly see the Roman numerals for the major arcana. Let's zoom in a bit. I can clearly see the Roman numerals, so I won't get like this card mixed. Well, this is Justice, so that's easy. Hanged Man's easy. The ones that I used to have a hard time with were the Empress and the Emperor. Yeah. So I feel like this one I would sometimes get confused with one of the court cards. The Emperor, not so much. Oh, he's the Emperor, not the Hierophant. I called him the Hierophant. That's our Hierophant, the tree. That's right. Because in the courts, let's go into the earthly courts, for example. Yeah. So in the courts, we have Page of Wands, Knight of Wands, Queen of Wands, and King of Wands. And I feel like those I'm not going to get mixed up. The ones that I think I had trouble with were I want to say it was the Suit of Earth. Let's just double check. Yeah, so we have King of Swords, Queen of Swords, Knight of Swords, Page of Swords. And see, the Czech, I'm not going to even try to pronounce it, but, well, I am going to try to pronounce it, but it looks like Papez. So we have Paisy right here. I'm probably slaughtering these. Kralovna and Kral. Kralovna and Kral. So Kralovna will be queen. Kral will be king. I think all those will be pretty easy to get used to. But again, I'm already familiar with this deck, so I don't think it'll take any time at all. Yeah, these ones here. Even though they're both made from trees, for some reason, I would pull these and I would sometimes think Emperor or Empress. I feel like it was one of those that I used to get kind of confused. And there is actually also a wand card. What happened here? Oh yeah, these are our wands. So these are the Page, Knight, Queen, and King, but there is, I think it's the 9 of Pentacles. Let's just, wait a minute. Yeah, that's the 9 and the 10 of Pentacles. Maybe it was in Earth. It might have been in Earth. She's playing a piano, or she's playing a musical instrument. I bet you it's in the earthly suit. Yeah, 5, 6, 7, 8. There it is. Her. I kept thinking that she was the page of, I want to say I used to think she was the page, either the Page of Pentacles or the Page of Wands. I don't know. There was something about her playing music that used to really throw me off. So here I can clearly see she's in the Pentaclu suit. You can see there's a pentacle there, but this is actually the 9 of Pentacles. And then we have the 10 of Pentacles. And then we have our Page, Knight, Queen, and King. I want to give these a shuffle. I don't know if this video is going to be helpful to anybody, but somebody posted, I think somebody actually posted in the Supportive Tarot Facebook group about this Czech edition being back out. And I just got really, really excited. So I immediately ordered it on Book Depository. And I just thought maybe some of you guys would be excited about it too. If you've hesitated on this deck because the cards just are really hard to see the details, I really think this edition is big enough. It's because it's definitely bigger than a standard tarot size, and the cardstock is still nicely flexible. I may go back in. I don't know if I want to modify it at all, but I am slightly tempted to go back in and add the Roman numerals to the cards. I mean, I do feel like I could modify this and it would do really well in a modification. I think the backs would end up looking much like these backs. I think I'd end up having to cut off, let's just see. So if that's where the border ends, let me just pull that out a bit and flip it over. Oh, actually, it looks like if that's where the border ends, sorry, I'm doing this off screen. I just kind of marked where the border end on the front. That means I would be chopping off the border just below this little glowy pentacle here. I think it would actually look even better. Oh yeah, and well below the pentacle here. They'd be slightly off center, but in the Llewellyn one, it sort of cuts into that bottom pentacle. And I think in this one, if I were to modify it, oops, I'm just marking it again just to make sure. Yeah, it would definitely be cut off below that little pentacle. That's good to know. I am sort of tempted to modify it, but then part of me is like, just leave it. Just leave it with the foreign language on there. So we'll see. But I feel like I'll use this deck more with it feeling like it's a full-size deck. And that's what I want. I want to be tempted to reach for it so much more than I am now. Because despite spending that quality time with it, it's just one where I struggle to see the little details. And I think this version of it just does it a lot more justice. Let's just lay out some cards and see what we think. So we have our Queen of Swords. I had to think about it. This deck does have a little bit of a bow. You can kind of see the cards are lifted up. Then we have the Two of Cups, Jovka, Poharu. So Poharu is cups, Mesu is swords. Then we have our Emperor. I'm putting the cards out crooked. And then we have our Nine of Cups. Yeah, I feel like I'm still going to benefit by a number or a Roman numeral on each card and their elemental symbol. So I think I may add those in the corners. Let's just take another look. Yeah, that's the 10. That's the Page of Cups. There is our Queen of Wands, because Kralovna is queen, but I think it'd be really easy to forget that. So I think what I'll do is I think I'll take a silver Sharpie and I'll just note in the left corner either the Roman numeral of the card or the number of the card, or page PQKN or K for king. And then on the right-hand side, I'll do the elemental symbol, or I'll just leave it if it's a major arcana. Hanged Man. There's our Two of Wands. There's our Queen of Cups. And there's our King of Cups. Then again, I'm tempted to sort of play with it for a while and just see if I get used to seeing these check words and if I can make the associations without that. I don't know. What do you guys think? Would you add the silver Sharpie hints just to make it flow really nicely? Would you trim it? What would you do? There's a part of me that's tempted to trim because I feel like, I mean, let me grab a standard, like, low Scarabeo size deck. And let's just see if it fits inside the artwork, because I think it might. Yeah, it pretty much does. So basically, if I were to trim the borders off of this version completely and make it borderless like this one, and silver Sharpie on there, the titles of the cards, what I would actually end up, because you can see the different sizes here. So let's just do this. Let me zoom in. So if I were to flip this over, you can really see. So there is this is a standard sort of low Scarabeo size card. Here is my trimmed Shadowscapes. So if I were to trim this deck down to take the, and actually, yeah, if I were to trim this deck down to take the sides and the bottom title off, I'd end up with a card that's very close, just a little bit shorter than a standard tarot card. But it would be fully borderless. So that may be what I do, actually. And I may do that sooner than later, because if I do it now, while I can still get this check edition, then if I don't like how it turns out, I can get a fresh one with the borders on. But I think that's the one thing I'm missing, is I wanted bigger cards, and I wanted bigger cards that had the, I wanted bigger cards that still had it borderless. Like in an ideal world, that's what I would want. And I think it would look beautiful re-edged in the softer colors. And I also think that the deck will be more pliable. The gilding tends to kind of, I don't know, sometimes it kind of gives the cardstock a slightly different feel. I don't think I'll miss the gold. I think it's a nice touch, but I don't think it's something that I'll miss. Yeah, I think that's probably what I'm going to do. So the next time I have time for a mod, I think I'm going to go ahead and trim this down completely borderless. And then after I've trimmed it, rather than before, I will add the Sharpie. I don't want to add the Sharpie first in case I end up cutting into it, because that'd be annoying. But I definitely think I can trim this. And I think the backs will look better than they look on here because I don't think I'll be cutting into the bottom pentacle. There'll still be a little more space up here and less space down here. Sorry, I'm just bringing you into my brain with me so I can show off this new edition and talk about my plans and figure it out. But it's so beautiful. I think the check will be distracting. I think I'm going to do better if I just have the number or the suit designation or the court designation and then the alchemical symbol. Yeah, I think that is what I want to do, especially seeing the size. So that is my project. So I'm back. It's the next day. After I filmed the video talking about the Shadowscapes and the Czech edition and all that stuff, I did decide to go ahead and do a mod. So I thought I would report back how all that went and sort of film a new ending to the previous video. Because when I was filming this video earlier, I basically ended with being not entirely sure what I was going to do. I said I'd report back, and then I was like, you know what? I jumped right into it, so I figure I might as well sort of refilm the end of this video and show you what I actually did. So this, if you remember, was the original modification of the Llewellyn edition of the Shadowscapes Tarot. And what I ended up doing is I went back in and I used silver Sharpie. In fact, let me grab the pen that I used. So the pen that I used to write on the cards is this Sharpie paint pen. It comes in a set of 3, and I've used this set of pens for a different modification as well, but it's a felt tip. It's extra fine, and it is a paint pen. It is water soluble, or water based, I should say. So that's good because as I was doing this, the ink took a little bit, or the paint took a little bit to dry, and some of the cards smeared when I was first doing it, but then once it set, it was good. But they do wipe off with water, so this is definitely not a deck you want to get damp, but I mean, like, we don't want to get our decks damp anyway. But I went ahead and added the elemental and numbers to this original modified version of the deck that I had, because I realized I don't want to get rid of this version. I still want to be able to use it. This was, this is the original copy, and with it being smaller, I have one that I can use for bigger spreads, perhaps, but I definitely wanted to keep this one. So I went ahead and added the titles and the numbers to this version as well. So that's all I did to that one, but I did mod the Czech edition of the deck, and here's where I ended up. So this is in one of Peggy's small Peggy bags. So I took all of the borders off. I mean, I could not be happier. I took the borders off. Like, you can really tell this is the same number of cards, but I just want to show you the cardstock difference here. So this is the original Llewellyn edition that I had trimmed, and you can really see there's a significant difference in the size of the cards. So fully trimmed, the Czech edition is much bigger, but when we're talking about the thickness of the deck, it is really night and day. That is how much thicker the Czech edition is. It feels a lot sturdier. It feels more substantial in the hand, obviously, but I did take all of the edges off. I edged the edges in a silver color. I used this Brilliance ink pad, and I'll have links to these pens and these ink pads down below. I've been using these lately for pretty much all of my deck edging, these little dewdrop ink pads, but this is the one called Starlight Silver. So it is metallic. It does have some shine to it. It was quite wet, so it was a process, but I got a really nice even coat. There's some spots that are a little shinier than others, but I don't mind that at all. So it came out really, really nice. I just decided for this bigger one to go with a uniform edging as opposed to the multicolored, plus it kind of gives them both their own little special moment, I guess. There's their differences. So with this one, I'm going to just grab that same, it wasn't a Los Scarabeo deck. I kept saying Los Scarabeo, but this is a US Games deck, the Joie de Vivre Tarot by Paulina Cassidy. So I kind of eyeballed what the differences in size were going to be. It's still a little different. So I'll just show you this way. So it's almost the exact same width as the US Games Joie de Vivre with just a little bit less. It's a little bit shorter, but it feels very close to a standard tarot size card in the hand once it's fully trimmed, which is amazing. I love that. So the cardstock feels really good, fully borderless. It looks beautiful. I feel like I can see all of the artwork. I could not be happier to have what I feel is a much more usable copy of this deck. I feel like my eyes don't have to work as hard to spot the details in the cards. It may seem kind of insignificant, that size difference, but it really isn't. I mean, when you look at, that's quite a bit of real estate on the card. And I feel like it just does more justice to Stephanie's beautiful detailed artwork. But I'm thrilled. And the modification, adding the titles on there just means that I don't have to worry about cards. Like this card often felt like it could be in the wands because of the piano. Now it's very clear it's the Nine of Pentacles. So I'm just really, really happy. I think the silver Sharpie shows up well, but it's not super obtrusive. And the backings, as you can tell, as I predicted, the bottom little star here is not fully cut off, and the top, there's a little bit more space. But the previous trim, it does cut into, just a difference in size of cards, right? It does cut into it just a bit. So I'm really happy with the backs too. I think they came out really pretty, even with the trim. And I find that this deck is easier to shuffle. I like the feel of the, I like the fact that it doesn't feel, I don't have that like metal gilding there. That doesn't feel great. And I got a nice even trim, so it shuffles really, really well. I did use the measurement method, so I was very methodical, slow, very, very precise and careful with my trims. In fact, I wanted to trim off the least amount, so I really set the trimmer very like close to the edge of the artwork, and on one top and one side, I actually had to get partway through the deck and then go in just a hair more because sometimes the border was peeking through. There may actually be one or two cards where the border is just ever so slightly visible, but I wanted to be very confident that I wasn't cutting into the actual artwork. So I wanted to turn over the bits I trimmed off and see that there was just a sliver of art. And I was able to do that, which makes me really, really happy. And so I got a really even trim without sacrificing the artwork. I'm just so thrilled to have a copy of this deck that I feel like is just so much more usable. I feel like I'll actually reach for this far more often than I used to. I'm going to hang this on my favorites rack and really just reach for it more, try it with some client readings, see how I feel about it, and we'll see. But I'm really, really, really pleased because I feel like this one just felt so, I don't know, delicate. It was hard for me to see. And I feel like this other version just ended up just sitting there as kind of a memento of the fact that it had sentimental value. But this feels, I mean, by comparison, this just feels so much more papery. I'm just so pleased. So if you are drawn to this deck, but you want something that feels a little higher quality, I definitely recommend this process. You don't even have to trim it. I trimmed it because I found that the check was going to confuse me more than anything else. And I really wanted to have the same experience, the same visual experience of working with this deck borderless. And yeah, I'm just really, 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 really pleased. So again, I still stand by, you know, buying this original Llewellyn edition in spite of the flimsy cards. I do feel like the benefit of that is that you get this beautiful, if you can find a copy that has the full-size guidebook, you get the benefit of this beautiful full-size companion book, which I think is wonderful. I feel like with this bigger book, you just get more. Most of the time, though, when I see the Shadowscapes Tarot being sold, it's just sold the deck with a little white book, and this guidebook is wonderful. I'm so glad I have this from the original set, and now I have a set of cards that just feels perfect. So I'm just thrilled with how it all turned out, and I'm excited to have been able to share the process with you guys. So thanks for coming along with me as I shared my experiences with sort of bringing in the Czech edition, modifying, and kind of finding a place for this again in my collection, in my library. I just really had fun doing this and wanted to share the final results with you. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was useful. I will have a link, like I said, down below to the modding products that I used, including the trimmer that I use, the markers, the ink pads, and I'll also have a link to, if I can find a link for the boxed set version of the Shadowscapes, I will link that. I will also link Book Depository where I got the Czech edition of the Shadowscapes so that I could create the modification for this bigger, sort of sturdier version of the deck. So anyways, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Definitely be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, do all those good YouTubey things. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye guys.